Max wakes up the next day, much later than usual, feeling exhausted from last night, only to find his grandkids sat around Gwen's laptop, listening to the morning news. Something normal for Gwen, but very unusual for Ben. However, it all makes sense when Max spots just what's being covered, as he sees the very fight he fought through the night before being played on national TV, or at least CCTV footage from across the road that had managed to pick up glimpses of the fight just before the flash fire had burnt the entire street to cinder, before cutting to a freeze frame of a blue blur taking down Animo, which Max recognises as himself in his Concelerant form. However, thanks to the blurry nature and the poor camera quality of all the footage, more importantly, the fact Max's identity hasn't been revealed, the man naturally lets out a sigh of relief. But Ben, with wonder in his eyes, turns back to his grandfather, asking if he'd seen any of this happen. Max looks at his grandson and tells him he didn't see a thing, and in all honesty, this all looks very fake to him. However, this lie is much harder to uphold when the street that he had charred to a crisp is only a short walk away, worst of all, on his very path that he needs to take for their next destination, as they drive past the street, seeing it taped off by police and a group named Sect. But that isn't the thing which catches Max's eye, as another face shows himself, causing Max to slam on his brakes, spotting his old partner, Phil. The man is currently sweeping the area, acting as some sort of consolant to the Sect team, talking to who Max can assume is the leader. Quickly rushing out of the rust bucket, Max is spotted by the man, and soon he is leaving the crime scene, rushing over and sharing a hug with his old buddy. Max asks Phil what he's doing here. Phil, with a smirk on his face, explains that after the alien, Max shushes Phil loudly as his two grandkids approach, causing Phil to pull a face as if to ask his old partner if he is still keeping secrets from his family. However, Max just glares at Phil, making the younger man chuckle as Max introduces Phil to his two grandchildren, learning that this is their grandpa's old colleague from work. Ben, having seen Phil inspecting the site of Heat Blast's fight last night, asks what he's doing and asks if he's figured anything out. Max, looking at his grandson, asks what's a heat blast, making Ben chuckle that it was the fire dude who beat up those bad guys on this road last night, saying that if a superhero is about, he has to have a name. He's also wondering on what to name that blur that beat that weird Animo guy. He's thinking Accelerate. Max just sighs but chuckles at his grandson before Phil turns to both grandson and grandfather, answering both of their question, explaining that he was brought in by an old friend of theirs. Apparently Colonel Rosum needed an extra set of eyes on the scene. Max is shocked to hear Rosum's name after all of these years, and pulls a face going to ask a question, with Gwen quickly interjecting, asking why a colonel and the police need a plumber on the site of a superhero street fight. Phil shrugs his shoulders, saying he isn't too sure, but he isn't going to complain. After all, it's paying his bills, an answer which for now suffices for the young girl, but she knows there's more to this than either adult is letting on. But before they can continue talking, Phil is called back by what the Tennysons can only assume is the leader of this Sect squad. Phil holds up a finger, indicating he just needs one more minute, telling the Tennysons he's sorry but he's got a flash, but looks towards Max, telling him business is really good at the moment, and he would love to have him back on his side, to help him join up on this case. But Max refuses. However, he doesn't look this gift horse in the mouth. Having wanted a chance to get some backup for a while now, Max asks Phil what he's doing after this job. Phil mockingly puts his fingers to his face as if trying to figure out what's going on, before admitting he's got nothing going on, he's retired, making Max smile as he tells the man he could do with a favour, asking Phil to meet him in New York and in a couple of days if possible. Phil nods his head, telling Max anything for a friend. As the pair share a hug goodbye, Max whispers into Phil's ears, telling him something big is happening, and he needs his help. As the pair pull away, Phil pulls a face, but nods his head, heading off to help Sect Squad with the finishing stages of their sweep. As we head into the next episode, that being Kevin 11, the Tennysons find themselves in the Big Apple. Thanks to Phil having done Colonel Rosum a favour, he actually managed to pull some strings and arrived in New York before the family, waiting for Max at the hotel they had agreed upon. When meeting up with his old friend, Max tells his kids to go have fun while him and his old friend catch up. From here, the canon story of Kevin 11 takes place, but with some changes. Thanks to Ben having no watch, he isn't able to stop the older boys from attacking Kevin, so a fight does break out. However, he isn't going to stand on the sidelines and watch his new friend get beat up, soon jumping into the fight. Sharing his grandpa's will, he doesn't go down easily, getting knocked down multiple times but getting back up. That, joined by Kevin's Osmosian's abilities, plus a reluctant karate-trained Gwen, manages to fend off the bullies, albeit with everyone leaving the fight with quite a few bruises. From there, the trio spend their time hanging out in a burger shack not too far from the arcade, where Ben and Kevin become fast friends, learning of their shared love of sumo slammers and video games, while Kevin learns of Ben being the one to create the hero spotting website. However, does tease the boy that he has only got 2 really bad pictures of 2 possible heroes, making Ben grumble a bit. However, thanks to them having opened up a little bit, it gives Ben and Gwen a chance to learn of Kevin's life, or at least what he will speak of, which isn't a lot. However, it's enough for them to at least learn his last name, and a little bit more about the boy. As for Max, he and Phil share a drink in the rust bucket. At first they do spend some time truly catching up, learning of how the other have spent retirement, but soon Phil asks Max why he wanted him here, and what did he mean something big's happening. Max sighs, realising that he is no longer a grandpa and needs to be a plumber again, places his hand on the table, revealing the Omnitrix to Phil, telling Phil all which had happened since he had found the watch, and his fears that Vilgax might be back, and he could be attacking. Phil tells Max that's crazy, they saw him die together, they strapped him to a bomb, and he's just being paranoid. But Max shakes his head, telling him he saw one of those old robots they used to take down when they were younger. He is back, and he thinks he wants the watch. Phil struggles believing this, but the watch being on Earth would make some sense for Squidface, if he was alive, to make Earth his target, but they've kicked his butt, so would he really come back here? Phil teasingly asks Max if he has tried contacting Xylene, as she would answer any question he wanted and answer the call from him no matter how far away she was, plus she would have all the answers for him. But Max shakes his head, explaining his worries of using any plumber lines, since he isn't sure what is and isn't safe anymore. All the equipment is really out of date now, and nothing has been secured in years. There's no knowing what Vilgax has got his tentacles on, so nothing is safe, which is why he didn't contact him. Phil nods, following Max's line of logic, but he still struggles to believe that Vilgax is alive. He watched the explosion happen. There's no way. And if Vilgax was still alive... He then looks to Max, asking, almost scoldingly, if Max truly thinks Vilgax is still around and coming for him. Why are the grandkids still here? Why didn't he drop them off back at home? Max, hanging his head in defeat, tells Phil he missed so much of his kid's life. Everything from birthdays, graduations, weddings, and so much more. He just wanted one summer where he could be a normal person. He could be a normal grandpa, admitting to know it to be a selfish wish. But those kids are the closest family he's got nowadays, and he doesn't want to ruin what could be his last summer with them. Phil, having never had the chance to start a family due to the plumber life, understands this, and the room falls silent for a little bit, before the silence is broke by Phil's tutting, that if Max has really gone and gotten all soft and mushy during his time of retirement, and he needs this time with his family, he supposes he could spend his summer travelling around in this rusty RV, just to make sure if Squidface is back and is going to try something, he has backup. Max goes to tell Phil that isn't necessary, but Phil, placing his hand on his partner's shoulder, gives him a smile, telling him they beat that alien's butt once before. They can do it again. Besides, retirement's been so boring, and he could do with a bit of spice in his life. Max smiles, thanking Phil, who tells him not to sweat it. That's what partners are for. From here, Max and Phil brainstorm a few things, such as how to prevent Gaxi from finding them, and Max sharing how he's actually planning his trip to take them to Mount Rushmore, since if they can grab the gun they used to beat him once, it'll probably do it again. Phil agrees to this idea, before sharing how he will follow the family in his own car. That way, they have 2 means of vehicles, 2 means of escapes, and if something was to go wrong, they can always try splitting up and regrouping it later. He will use the RV to camp out at night. Max agrees to this, finding it to be a very logical answer, just in case the rust bucket was to bite the dust. From here, the duo head off to find the kids. Having all arrangements sorted, they now just want to break the news to the younger members of their squad, managing to find them in a diner not too far away from the arcade. But upon entering, they not only spot that the kids are scuffed up and hurt, but also that they're with a boy who, when they look at, feel as if they are seeing a ghost. As the two former plumbers share a look, but before they can speak, the boy is quick to stand up from the table, not wanting to deal with the old guy's wrath, clearly seeing that Max is angry at his grandkids for being so scuffed up. Looking to Ben and Gwen, he tells them both they kick real butt, and if they're ever looking to get in a fight again like that, he's happy, and makes sure to call him. But for now, he's heading out, telling them to hit him up if they're ever around again. Ben gives out a happy yep while Gwen just moans, hoping to never see Kevin again. Max wants to say something to the other boy before he leaves, but looking at his grandkids, seeing them scuffed and bruised up, he can't contain his grandpa rage. Turning to them, he begins scolding them, asking what they thought they were doing. But slowly, as he learns the reason of why they had a fight and why they picked one, it slowly turns from annoyance to pride he feels towards his grandkids. And after learning that they fought for a good reason, all he asks they do next time is get an adult, something both agree to do. Phil, however, can't help but pipe up, adding that he can give them another option on how to learn to throw a proper punch, making it so next time they don't get hit as much. Max stares daggers at Phil, while Ben happily pipes up shouting he would love that. With it fresh on the mind, they ask who the other boy sat with them was, learning his name, and the older men share a look once more. The pair nod at one another before leading the kids back to the rust bucket. Along the journey, Max takes the time to learn all he can about Kevin from the kids, even learning where the boy might reside. And after a long night of explaining how Phil will be joining them, an idea which is sealed and approved by the kids after the man cooks them all some normal food, both former plumbers head out, telling the kids that they are going on a walk to keep their bones strong. Phil making a retort that is mainly for Max, getting a laugh out of Ben. Shortly after, the pair find themselves in Kevin's hideout, a few blocks away from where they had parked up the rust bucket, spotting the boy doing something Max had prayed he wouldn't, as he watches him drain energy from an old circuit board. Max is suddenly fired upon, as Kevin fires lightning from his palm, causing Phil to quickly push Max out of the way before rolling on the ground, picking up a stone and throwing it as hard as he can at the kid's head. Thanks to his expert aim, he manages to knock the kid not only off his feet, but nearly knock him completely out, causing the kid's head to spin as he falls down to the ground, trying to find his feet. Max shouts out to Phil to stop it, but Phil remarks that he only discombobulated the kid, nothing else. Max tells Phil to be more careful, and Phil grumbles, but as the pair make it to Kevin, Max begins to ensure that the smaller boy is okay, luckily only having a small bump forming on his head, no permanent damage done, which Max goes to tend to, but before Max can even lay a hand on the boy, Kevin pushes it away, asking just who the hell these old guys are and what they're doing here. Max, looking Kevin in the eyes, tells the boy that they just wanted to check on him. After all, they're old partners of his father and very close friends. At hearing this, the rage that was behind Kevin's eyes suddenly fades, his eyes widening, asking if these two are plumbers. Phil, with an arrogant smile, tells Kevin, "You betcha." Hearing this, Kevin looks around his hideout all of a sudden, and as if panic and anxiety kicks in, begins to clean a small area for everyone to sit down, all the rage that they had seen in his eyes while he was absorbing energy vanishing for this moment. Max chuckles, telling Kevin that isn't necessary, but explains that when they saw him, they knew who he was and just wanted to check in on him. After all, his father would never forgive them. The trio then spend a short while chatting away, Max and Phil sharing stories of Kevin's father, purposely dragging out any story they tell as much as they can, hopefully allowing any energy that has built up in Kevin's body to fade away, hoping that the rage and insanity that that energy brings alongside it to fade away with it. During this conversation, they learn of how Kevin wishes to be a plumber, just like his father, and hearing how hard Kevin's home life had been since his father's death, made only worse by the insanity that the energy absorption had caused, not that Kevin knows this. Max, hearing this, feels a pit of guilt in his stomach, wishing he had done better on that mission, wishing he had found a way to stop Ragnarok himself. But it's all in the past now, and there's nothing he can do. After a few hours, both Max and Phil are willing to gamble that Kevin has lost some of the energy built up inside of him, and definitely seems a lot calmer. So Max tries to talk to the boy into returning back to his home to see his mother, but it seems to flare up whatever residue of energy remains inside of him, as he says he isn't wanted there, so he isn't going back. Max tries to reason with the kid, but when Kevin fires a bolt of lightning which Max narrowly avoids, Max giving Phil a look as if telling him to put the gun down, which he was already trying to unholster from his back pocket. Phil does so, however has a different idea, as he steps in, asking Kevin if he really wants to be a plumber. This seems to calm the kid down, as he nods eagerly. Phil then makes a deal with Kevin, telling him that because he's an Osmosian, and he's half alien, technically he can go to the Plum Academy now. He doesn't have to wait until he's older, causing a genuine smile to light up on Kevin's face as Max, walking over to Phil, whispers into his ear asking what the hell he is doing. Phil, in a voice so neutral that it's scary, tells Max that it's this or the null void. Max can feel his fist tighten at hearing this, but Phil, whispering back, tells him that they'll set ground rules and he can choose them, before pushing forward and telling Kevin that he has friends in the academy, people who trained his father, so he can do a few things and get him a place in the academy. Kevin nods more eagerly than before, likely more than he's ever nodded before in his life, and Phil turns to Max, telling Kevin that if he wants to go to the academy, there's going to be some ground rules, and his friend here is going to set them. Kevin and Max aren't happy about this, but Max is happy knowing he can at least set some ground rules. And the first one, and most important one he ensures to Kevin, is that he needs to stop absorbing energy. Kevin's eyes twitch at this, as if he wants to retort, but doesn't want to lose his shot at the academy, so bites his tongue, as Max goes on to warn Kevin of how dangerous it is once again, causing a small flicker of lightning to appear in Kevin's palms, but he uses all of his willpower to not say anything back. Max then goes on to list the next rule, as he tells him that he needs to head home so the academy knows where to pick him up from, and Kevin's poor mother will know he's safe, something which seems to comfort Kevin ever so slightly. However, he's still not happy about this rule. And finally, Max warns Kevin it could be a few months before anyone comes to collect, as they'll want to monitor him in his day-to-day life to make sure he's upholding all of these rules, a lie which Max is hoping Kevin won't see through. Kevin does go to argue back, but he's stopped by a look from Phil, which tells the kid this is the best deal he's going to get, so he should take it or leave it. Kevin, not wanting to blow the chance given to him, agrees, while hanging his head low, promising to start heading home tomorrow, after he's packed whatever few possessions he's got. Max smiles as he reaches into his pocket and hands the kid over some money for the journey, telling Kevin he has a lot of potential, and if he's anything like his father, he'll be a hell of a plumber, asking him to please take every day of the training seriously. Kevin nods and looks at them, sincerely thanking them, more sincere than the thanks he had given Gwen or Ben earlier. As the boy starts packing the few possessions he calls his own, Max and Phil put their trust in the boy, heading out to head back to the rust bucket. While Max is annoyed that Phil has agreed to send the boy to the academy, since he is definitely too young, now in hindsight he can at least look at things and admit that this could be the only path which saves Kevin. He had considered offering him a place in the RV, but he knows it was probably too dangerous for him. However, what Phil said about putting him in the null void really leaves a sour taste in Max's mouth, so while he does trust his partner, he's definitely keeping an eye on him. From here, the next batch of episodes are completely skipped or simplified. As the events of Tourist Chap are avoided, and the family instead spend a day fascinated by it. The events of Alliance play out in a much similar way, as thanks to Max having the watch when Rojo and her gang attack the gas station, thanks to Max being able to get the kids to safety, while Phil distracts the crooks, Max gets a chance to transform into his Petro Sapien state and quickly encase the crooks in crystals, before then swiftly dealing with the Vilgax drones which appear shortly after. This moment proving to Phil that Max's hunch could be correct, causing him to take Max's threat more seriously, and agree that they might need the big gun to take down Vilgax, in case he is back. The episode of Lucky Girl starts out similar, however never makes it past the opening act. Thanks to Phil and Max having great teamwork and chemistry, they're able to work together to defeat Hex, Phil acting as a distraction initially to allow Max to transform into his ecto-neurite form and quickly steal away the charm to Bazelle from Hex. And with the building evacuated during the fight, Phil is able to take down Hex using a low-grade blaster he had kept from his former plumber days. It's during this fight Max actually learns something about his ecto-neurite form, that being that it doesn't feel old like the others. In fact, it feels really strong, as if the effects of aging do nothing to it. In fact, it could be possible that it has the opposite effects and has made him stronger. But the more interesting thing he finds is that the charms of Bazelle hurt him, Touching them causes physical pain. He takes note of how powerful they are, and for some reason he's reminded of Rona when looking at them. So whether out of nostalgia for his former wife, or just a backup plan in case Vilgax ever gets his hand on the watch, Max chooses to keep the charms of Bazelle in the RV, knowing that they could be useful at some point. The episode A Small Problem doesn't happen. Instead, it's an episode about the family having a fun day at the water park. The only thing of note being that Ben watches Phil and Max show off some rather impressive marksman skills using some water pistols to knock over a stack of cans, winning themselves some free food. Ben, seeing this, wants to learn how to do that and asks to get taught. While Max refuses, Phil offers to do so for the boy, and as much as Max disapproves of what Phil is doing, he takes time to show Ben the proper procedure of handling and aiming a gun, learning that the boy is actually quite a good shot and a quick learner at that. The episode's side effect doesn't happen. Instead, the group find themselves enjoying some good Chinese food, while Max tries to talk his kids into eating some insects, which they vehemently refuse to do. Finally, the big one, the final episode of Season 1, Secrets. Yeah, this episode is about Ben and Gwen updating the catalogue of heroes that they have been spotted on their website. You've got to remember, Squidface can only track when the Omnitrix is activated. So with Max not playing with the device like Ben would, he truly has no idea where to start looking. And worse off, Max hasn't been acting as a hero, like Ben did in canon. So he's got no idea where the watch is. Its appearance is only ever happening every now and again. So for now, Vilgax is completely blind on where the watch is. So instead, the last episode of Season 1 is Ben and Gwen receiving images of Accelerate versus the Vilgax droid that come to surface, confirming the second hero's existence. We're also now being able to add 2 new heroes into the entry, as Ben, who had managed to not only take a photo of, but watch in action, adds Diamond Head to the catalogue. The picture itself is terrible, but it's good enough that you can make out a crystal man is firing spikes out of its hand towards some robot. And the other one comes from security footage from the Witchcraft Museum they had been in not that long ago, of some ghostly hero Ben dubs Ghost Freak. And while Ben dances around learning that there are multiple heroes, not just the Fire Dude, who admittedly is his favourite so far, he is hoping there's so many more heroes out there. But while Ben is celebrating, Gwen is noticing something. The photos are bad, and she can't really make out any detail on them. She can't help but realise all of these photos and all of these hero sightings have taken place in towns and places they have been. Campsite, the museum, the street not too far from the circus, all of these places aren't too far from places they have been. She can't figure out what the connection is, but she's starting to piece together something. She just doesn't know what. While the kids are doing this, Max is sat around cooking up some food, having sent Phil off to Mount Rushmore, which is only an hour's drive away, to collect the gun which had helped them defeat Vilgax before. The man, upon arriving, does so, collecting the gun and storing it in the boot of his car. However, he does find himself considering grabbing the null void projector. However, due to him being kept busy and getting to relive his glory days during these last few weeks, he doesn't. He's just going to continue following Max. He's reliving his glory days now, so he leaves the device behind. As he soon rejoins the Tennysons, we end Season 1 on a clip of Vilgax staring at a monitor of Earth, waiting for something to appear, waiting for any activity of not just the device, but also the plumbers. He needs a signal. He doesn't care how large it is. But for now, that's where I'm going to be leaving everything. This is Season 1 covered, and I'm sorry it's left off really anticlimactically. There's no big fight. Max is much more cautious. He knows how dangerous space is, and more importantly, how dangerous Vilgax is. He's not going to play with the watch unless he absolutely has to, which is why he doesn't transform much in this episode, and a lot of it is just done in the brief episodes where he kind of needs to. That all being said, I hope people enjoyed this story so far. I can see people not liking this part. Not a lot happens. A lot of it is just me setting up things, or a lot of this part is just me covering a lot of boring episodes, and the stuff that is interesting are the first 2 episodes. Initially, Phil wasn't going to join the group, and then I kind of fell in love with the idea of them having him around. So here I am. That all being said, I do hope everyone enjoyed, and are looking forward to seeing what happens in the future. If you like the video, leave a like and let me know. But for now, I hope you all had a great day or a good night, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.